The following is intended only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion advised.
Alright, welcome back to some more heat. Quite literally, because shit might end up turning into Oppenheimer in today's episode. And you guys already know what the deal is. Upgrades, people, upgrades. Because around earlier this year, I dropped a video where I tried recreating Arkham Batman Smoke Pellets that he uses to either A, hide, or B, just pick off people one by one and diddle them. The latter isn't really the best option. And we actually managed to come pretty close. But in terms of having it go off an impact, it was kind of a dud. Until today, that is. Because, of course, I wouldn't have dropped this video unless I had something bigger and better to offer. So as you already seen by the title, today we're going to upgrade our smoke pellets using a few new recipe modifications as well as experimenting with some different variations. Okay, pause. Now typically I don't encourage ever trying to recreate or mimic anything that I do in these videos, but this is all for entertainment, thrill, and science. And I know that people love to get some very bright ideas. So before we continue, I'm legally and morally obligated to read out these terms of services to you in case you do try anything. Just Method LLC is not responsible for any injuries, deaths, loss of family members, the impregnating of household pets, your girl leaving you for a 6-month black eye, or STDs that may occur as a result of this video. This video is strictly for educational as well as comedic purposes. If you or family members considering jumping off the building, seek help immediately. This video is intended to be targeted towards people who want to be able to show off in front of the agent of the teen girls walking around campus and manage to find their way into their apartments later. Just Method LLC is also not responsible for any harassment charges or restraining orders that are gained as a result of this video. Results may vary, but it's been proven to have a generally moderately high success rate. Trust me, I would help. Your discretion is advised. And I just need you to sign here. Okay, great, let's go. So buckle in, because I have a feeling that in today's video, something a lot worse is about to break out. Okay, now I'm pretty sure we could all agree that having smoke pellets on us would actually be like fire as hell. Like, imagine you stumble upon some douchebag named like Kevin Nguyen who stole your shawty after like 3 years. And obviously, you gotta find a way to slime him out, but you gotta do so with aura. What's a better way than catching his ass slacking in the alley and then pull off one of these?
How the hell would Batman be able to get into the museum? That place is locked down tighter than my mother on prom night.
What the hell does that mean?
You don't want to know. The freaking man!
Now, of course, in order to do this, we're gonna have to whip up a classic batch of our smoke pellet formula. But you already know, nothing bad's really about to break out until I call up my boy Black Jesse Pinkman first.
Jesse,
Mr. One.
wanna cook?
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so, due to scheduling conflicts, we had to recast Black Jesse Pinkman as this random white boy I found on the street. But hey, I'm not complaining, because not only does he shut the f up and do what I say, but bro, he also works for free. Like, this is as good as it gets.
I am the one, the way your son don't need a gun.
Okay, so for starters, we're gonna have to create some of that stuff that creepers from Minecraft drop after you stroke them long and hard enough. You know, that stuff called... Now, I am gonna have to be extremely careful about what I say here, because last time I made this video and it was completely uncensored, YouTube hit me with one of these. But I am gonna censor some stuff in this video, but like, don't worry, because I'm going to very cryptically give you the answers. You just have to pay attention. So for the sake of self-preservation, we're just gonna call gunpowder BP, and BP is just the abbreviation for black powder. Now, making BP really isn't all that difficult, as we can literally make it in the exact same way that the ancient Chinese did, and the only elements we're going to need is potassium nitrate, charcoal, and some sulfur. Now, there's a very unique ratio you're gonna need to make this stuff. It can be found on the internet, but it makes stuff a little bit easier for you guys. You're going to need all weighed by weight. Now, okay, I need you guys to pay very close attention because I'm only going to say this once. Like, if you blink, you'll miss it, all right? Do with that as you will. Now, what's generally cool about this stuff is by burning it, you're actually able to create smoke, which is obviously what we'll need, but this is only one key part of the overall puzzle. Now, unlike last time, we're gonna produce this BP a little bit differently. Now, generally, the potassium nitrate and sulfur are quite easy to obtain. The potassium nitrate used to be found in a lot of stump removers, but nowadays, a lot of stump removers contain an element that is, in fact, not potassium nitrate. And the brand that did use potassium nitrate for their stump removers has pretty much gotten, like, discontinued. So I had to go on this website called Seed World to buy about 5 pounds of straight potassium nitrate for like 20 bucks. So that's that. And obtaining sulfur really isn't that much more difficult. Now I had to go hunt for this at one of my local hardware stores. But if you see something called soil sulfur in a bag, that is your sulfur. Now after a lot of experiments and research, the main element that is going to either make or break your BP is going to be the charcoal. And make no mistake, there's a difference between this charcoal and this charcoal. And that difference being is that one is BS charcoal and the other is pure charcoal. Let me explain. You know how in Minecraft, one type of charcoal you get while mining and the other type you make from wood? Well, yeah, we're gonna need wood-based charcoal here. So how do we make wood-based charcoal, you might ask? Well, an easy way to do it is just gathering some wood, putting it in an oxygen-depraved environment, like this paint can with a hole in it, and then put it on some fire for a couple hours until this stuff carbonizes. Now, usually some people in some comments go like,
well, bro, why don't you just buy the charcoal from the store? There is, in fact, wood-based charcoal.
don't you think if I wanted to go buy wood-based charcoal, I would have done it? Like, why would I go spend $20 on a bag of charcoal when I could literally just make it in my backyard for free? But aside from that, what if I told you there was something else extremely common that you can use to substitute for wood, and maybe all those hours you put into gooning might not have been for nothing? Because did you know you can actually substitute toilet paper for wood when it comes to making great charcoal? And I looked into this, and this stuff actually is a super good alternative. All I needed now is to find a very sufficient paint can to put this stuff in. But the only paint cans I had literally all had random shit in it, so I needed to clean these out.
Oh, it's that Deriad shit, bro. Oh.
Okay, so after like 30 minutes of doing bullshit, we kind of realized that this was all for nothing. Because if you're going to make charcoal, you are going to need a metal paint can. And for whatever reason, on some ass shit, this paint can was made out of plastic. Because this was actually the mistake that I made last time. I put it in a plastic container, and then the entire shit was just gone. Like, it's reduced to atoms, like straight up. So yeah, that was kind of out. So this meant we were going to have to go to Louise to pick up some pretty cheap metallic paint cans.
Exo tatted all over her body, oh.
Filming murder.
Anyway, we're at Louise.
But these things are only about like $3 a pop, so I just picked up 2, so $6.
To the Batmobile.
Now, before we burn anything, you already know that we're gonna have to build a furnace on some Minecraft shit for real. Then obtain a proper fuel source. And then stand there as you lose your sight and ability to breathe as you're taking in all the fucking ashes.
I can't see! I can't see what I'm fucking... I can't see.
But once you get a nice fire going and you put your toilet paper in the can and then you stuff the can in the fire, you're gonna notice that it's blowing some gas out. This is a good sign that your charcoal process is going in the right direction. But generally making charcoal does take a couple hours. So in the meantime, we're gonna have to go to the kitchen and whip up a batch of some good old-fashioned RC candy. Now, making RC candy requires a couple of primary elements, some that we actually used earlier. Mainly consists of potassium nitrate, sugar, and a very cool quirky little element called red iron oxide that I'm gonna teach you how to make in a second. Now, red iron oxide is actually more commonly known as rust. And rust really comes into play whenever we seek to achieve a really high burn rate, which is completely important for giving these things a nice little spicy edge. Because we want these things to kind of go off and disperse as quickly as possible. Now, see, there are actually a couple of ways you can obtain this stuff. You could file some rust off of an old industrial support beam that you stole from the side of a building. And these things have like a shit ton of rust. But let's say for an instance that you aren't able to get your hands on an industrial support beam that you stole from the side of a building. Well, you can always just make the rust
In a cave!
Let me explain. Now, making rust is a pretty easy and quick process. All you're gonna need is some hydrogen peroxide, vinegar, and some salt. Mix that all together on like some pin pineapple apple pin shit. You're gonna notice your liquid turns a bit bubbly and red. Let your metal soak in there, and then wait about a day or two, take that shit out, and you should have some rust that you should be able to harvest. Now, once that's done, blend it all together into a fine powder, and then boom, red iron oxide. Now, the total mixture we're gonna need to make a good batch of this rocket candy is as follows. We are going to need measured by weight. Once again, blink if you'll miss it. I'm only gonna say that one. And once you have everything, you're gonna have to go through a kind of semi-complex cooking process. So again, make sure you pay extra close attention because I'm only gonna go over this one. So put all your potassium nitrate in a pot, mixed by some water, and make sure that it is unboiled. And so at this point, you need to let enough of the water kind of boil and evaporate out of the mixture, and you know you're going in the right direction whenever this shit foams up and almost spills over the edge.
Can you hear the music? Oh, wait.
But once you let the foam kind of settle, you'll kind of like scoop it up and see it has this nice little silky, white-ish, smooth texture. which kind of looks a lot like nuts. So once that's done, put your sugar in the pot, mix that shit around, and let it boil. Now stir it until it's like a brownish tannish color and it has like a pretty nice consistency. Now at this point, you can add your red iron oxide to the mixture. Now around this point, you're gonna want to turn your heat down to like medium heat and stir for about like, oh, I don't know, 6-7 minutes.
Wow, that guy's so funny. He must get all the HUDs laughing.
I'm trying to get like you, my boy. And now once it looks like super brown, like some forbidden shit, then turn your heat down. And you gotta let this stuff cool off, because once it cools, it's gonna harden. This is like what happens in a trap house, pretty much. You're seeing a very PG version of a trap house. Kids, this is how they make drugs. Now, however, this time I ran into a problem that I never really ran into before, and that was like about after a day or two, this stuff was still kind of damp, and it wasn't drying as quick as it usually did, and it was suffering from like some insane erectile dysfunction. So in the event this happens to you, just take the stuff and put it back in the pot on medium heat and just kind of let the rest of the moisture cook out. And if it doesn't look like this after 30 minutes, then you probably f***ed up. But if it looks like this after 30 minutes, you probably didn't f*** up. Oh, and also, certain disclaimer, the reason you want to turn down your heat at a certain point is because at a certain heat, sugar begins to caramelize. And remember, we want this stuff to dry. And if sugar caramelizes, it like won't really dry. So yeah, RC candy is pretty much complete. Now what we're going to do is go check up on that charcoal for our BP. Now, what's actually crazy is unlike the previous type of charcoal we made, this stuff was super light and hollow. Like, this stuff literally weighed next to nothing. So we're gonna have to find a way to grind some of these elements down. Yo, did you guys actually know there's an app for these things? Okay, here's a wacky little link. Go to grinder.com and you'll find all these grinders. Dude, they're freaking amazing. Now, usually what you're gonna do is you're gonna want to take all your elements and kind of mix them together. But now, okay, now whatever you do, never mix black powder in a grinder. So yeah, if you like your limbs, you're gonna kind of have to do this by hand. Now, some people use a ball mill to kind of like mix their BP together into a really fine powder, but I'm assuming that 90% of you are probably broke and don't have access to that shit. So let me put you on game right quick to a method that saves you both time and money. That, in my opinion, is almost just as effective. Now, generally what I did this time is I put all of it into like a gallon-sized bag, laid it on a hard surface, and then use a roller to crush all this stuff down. You do that for about 5 to 10 minutes. This stuff is gonna mix super well, and you're gonna kind of grind it like a very good bit. See, look at you saving both time and money using my method.
Say that again?
But given how hollow and light this charcoal was, we were going to need a lot of it. Because normal wood-based charcoal gives you about 50 to 60 grams of char once everything is done. But toilet paper, an entire roll, you're gonna get about 10 to 15 grams. So meaning to reach our golden ratio, we're gonna need about an entire roll of toilet paper. So I did some sample tests with different ratios. Ooh.
That burned a lot quicker.
Yeah, that catches a lot fucking quicker.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, I remember once upon a time, parents used to be like, don't run with knives. That's all I do now for a living. It's crazy. Definitely the charcoal. The charcoal's secret ingredient.
Shit reduced to atoms.
And looking back at this stuff with the previous type of charcoal we used, with no milling process used on both of them, using toilet paper pretty much cuts down our burn time in half. Alright, so far we've completed 2 of the primary compounds that we're gonna use to make our smoke pellets. But just when you think shit getting sweet, nah. Because this video is far from over. Because last time we combined 2 of these smoke compounds to simply make a mixture that when lit was able to disperse a lot of smoke over a decent surface area. And these things worked pretty well given what we did. However, some of you have very openly voiced your disappointment with the ending of that said video. Because, recap, I really wasn't able to get the activate on impact thing to work per se. So I just threw some smoke pellets into a small fire pit and had that stuff go off. And some guy wrote one of the most unemployed comments I've ever seen. Man, this dude talking about some...
Dude, smoke bombs exist. The ignition impact was the only reason
than I want. Honestly disappointed when you gave up on it without even trying to explain how it should work. Decent idea, I guess, generally, but you lost me. I literally subbed during the vid then unsubbed. Go further, I might be back. I guess you're in my algorithm now. But you gotta do something past middle school chemistry. Sugar smoke bombs that you have to light? Great science project for kids. You don't even need the charcoal, black powder, or rust. I've had much better results without. Just need an adult to supervise. Seriously.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks! So, we're definitely gonna address a lot more later in this video. But bro, in the meantime, I'm finna in this man's whole career. But anyway, to the guy, if you're watching, first off, shut your bitch ass up. And bro, peep this crazy ass jump scare. But after looking into some things a little bit further, what if I told you there are a few more things that go into making the Arkham Batman Smoke Pellets than you might think? Cause with a basic understanding of some physics and chemistry. In the next phase of this video, we're gonna figure out ways to make these things brighter, faster, more powerful, and activate on impact. Starting with trying to solve the impact ignition problem we did have before. So I was searching around the internet for ways to make some impact activated smoke pellets, and one of the most common ways people do it is just stacking a crap ton of match heads on some striking surfaces inside of a ping pong ball, and then idealistically whenever you throw it, it all just goes off. So back in the previous smoke pellet video, I tried the exact same thing, but for whatever reason, it just was not going off. But I was able to find a sketchy way to get around this whenever I made my I became an assassin in real life video, which you guys should really go check out because we were gonna get to a bunch of crazy stuff in that video. But I tried replicating an ignition pad, which is essentially the same process except you just stack match heads on striking surfaces and then you hit it with a hammer and then it creates a small little flame. I would then cut my ping pong balls a certain way, stuff it with the smoke compound, tape the ignition pad to the bottom, and then when I throw it, this would happen. And it would work, however, I did find it to be extremely inconsistent at times, even when you have the two-sided redundancy going on. So much later, I looked into a slightly more impact-sensitive mixture. Now, I looked into this stuff, and it's actually insane. Now, see, Armstrong mixture is pretty gnarly. Now, all it is a mixture of crushed match heads and sanded down sides of match boxes. And throwing this stuff at the ground has been known to create some pretty crazy effects. And bro, don't even get me started whenever these people mix this stuff in bulk. But despite that, I did it anyway to see if this would be a valid ignition source. And later with my smoke compound to see if the rumors were true. So welcome back to Factor Cap. I'm gonna hit this shit with a hammer though right quick, cause I know it does something. This shit don't. But I did find and found that it really wasn't all that satisfactory, because the Armstrong mix made from matches and striking surfaces isn't nearly as sensitive compared to if you actually use the real raw elements themselves. And last time I checked, a red phosphorus in its raw form is like pretty much not able to be bought. And like I keep telling you guys, bro, if I'm going to do anything, you guys already know, everything I do raw. And besides, these being ignition sources aren't really all that ideal, for the main reasons that one, carrying something this friction sensitive on you would not really be the best idea for starters. And using the striking surface method comes with like hella inconsistencies. And most of this would become quite costly and tedious after a while. Like imagine every time I wanted to make a smoke pellet, I'd have to go out, buy hella matches, cut them all up, harvest the striking surfaces, and then have these things maybe work. Yeah, no thanks. So that's when I moved on to a second idea. Now, a lot of people were commenting various ways to solve the ignition problem, and one of the most popular ones was potentially using silver fulminate. Now, silver fulminate is an extremely sensitive element. So sensitive, in fact, that a little bit of heat, pressure, or shock will make this stuff go off. But this element can be most commonly found in those little party snaps that you can sometimes find at the store. But I was able to get my hands on a couple packs around the 4th of July. But I entertained this idea because when you throw this stuff at the ground, it can actually create sparks. And last time I checked, a spark versus some BP. Furbiga, I know what we're gonna do today. So I took some, laced it with some BP, put it in a paper towel, threw it, and nothing happened. So this meant back to the drawing board. However, the bank snaps probably don't have to be fully ruled out just yet, because after searching the internet some more, I remembered this one video I saw like 10 or so years ago, back when I was a jit, and it was called Slammin' Ninja Smoke Bombs. Now, he used bank snaps mixed with some gunpowder and another element called magnesium. Now, I'll talk more about magnesium later, but I was looking into it and found that magnesium is like extremely spark sensitive, and it burns extremely hot, meaning that in theory, if we can get our hands on magnesium shaving, mix it with our BP and the bank snaps, this could create like some Oppenheimer level chain reaction cataclysmic event that that'll create one of these. So once again, welcome back to Factor Cat. So I went on the internet and ordered some magnesium shavings, the kind used for fire starters. I was like, okay, it's really about to go down now. Mix the magnesium with the party snaps and the BP, just like he did, threw it on the ground. And nothing. So I'm going back to the drawing board. And come to find out how to make an element like this really sensitive is if it's in its powdered form. And finding powdered magnesium isn't really able to be obtained like anywhere on the market.
Hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
And after doing further research, I come to find out that this shit wasn't even magnesium shavings. He was actually extracting ferrocium. Okay, so ferrocium is a culmination of a bunch of different type of earth metals. A little bit of magnesium included too. But it's that rod that you choke with your knife and it creates sparks. Now, many people call this a ferro rod, but others refer to it as flint and steel. So I bought a pack of ferro rods in hope of extracting a ton of this stuff and grinding it all down to some ferrocium powder. So I grind it off a little to test how it reacts. Kind of got a little bit bright. Okay, so now it's really about to go down. All I need to do to create the perfect setup to turn this stuff into a tycoon. But I'll admit, you're gonna get like really sweaty and tired while doing this stuff. So make sure you stay dry and moisturized. Now I started off making a setup where I would grind all this stuff down into a powder. So I got a file and started filing this stuff down into this pot. But doing this stuff is like constant back-to-back quick time events. Because if the file is too slow, you're barely gonna get anything. But if you file too fast, you're gonna create too many sparks. And if you're gonna end up extracting a spark-sensitive element, using a process is gonna create a ton of sparks. That means if one spark falls into this batch, everything will burn away, literally leaving you with nothing. Oh shit. And all your progress just goes away like that. Save file corrupted. So I spent the next 3 hours trying various types of methods to extract some more ferrocium power, and I'm glad to say that after 3 hours, this is how much I collected. Okay, but this might just be worth it if it actually ignites my compound. Okay, so bang snaps plus ferrocium power plus BP. Surely this works. So yeah, nothing.
All those tests and nothing!
But this is bullshit.
So at this point, I was just stumped. I thought there was gonna be no way to get this to work. I'm a fraud. That's it. It's over. I'm gonna lose all my subscribers. I'm gonna get a D- rating on Social Blade now. It's absolutely cooked. But all hope wasn't lost just yet. But little did I know I was about to be sent down a rabbit hole that was gonna change the trajectory of this video completely. Now, remember earlier when I was talking about powdered magnesium and whatnot? Well, what I wasn't aware of is how effective powdered metals are at making flash powder. Now, if you're not aware of how flash powders work, no worries, because I'm pretty sure this could give you a solid idea. Now, stick with me, because I have not forgotten about the impact ignition problem or the dispersal, because I promise you this will all make sense momentarily. Now, flash powders are able to create these. Now, what's good about their application is, one, how they're able to make a really bright flash, and on top of that, make a really loud bang.
Say that again?
Pretty much inhibiting two of your most crucial senses. Now, I was actually streaming the other Arkham Knight DLCs on my other channel, Jafonzlo. So go be sure to check out both my YouTube and Twitch, a link down in the description below. But anyway, as I was playing the Matter of Family DLC, I noticed that whenever I dropped a smoke pellet, it quickly makes a bright flash before dispersing the smoke. And after noticing that detail, I looked throughout all the other Arkham games and noticed that they all pretty much did the same thing. I mean, it was better showcased in the Arkham City cinematic trailer, but you can also see this happen a little bit in both City and Origins, and especially Night. So then that threw me down a larger spiral. Now, I noticed that throughout all the Arkham games, the smoke screens aren't all that dense, and really, they don't even last that long. But you know what aspect of the smoke pellets would? The flashbang part. The giant flash does most of the work while the smoke kind of just adds on to the effect. Because perhaps these things aren't really designed to create a super long lasting smoke screen, but rather these things are so effective because they disorient, distract, blind, and confuse your enemies long enough for you to either escape or take them out. I mean, these things' actual intention was actually stated perfectly in Batman Begins.
Ninjutsu employs explosive powders. As weapons? Or distractions. Theatricality and deception are powerful agents.
So his smoke pellets are really like mini flashbangs that create a smoke screen. It was primarily a disorienting distraction device. But now that we understand that, that's where the extra magnesium comes into play. Because magnesium has the ability to burn as hot as 5,600 degrees Fahrenheit, not only giving it a super bright flash. Now, as mentioned earlier, typically most people can't get their hands on a fine grade of magnesium powder that would be generally used for flashbangs, which is why most people instead just settle for powdered aluminum, because it's easily accessible in like government and shit.
Not a big fan of the government.
But however, that doesn't mean that this magnesium I already had still can't be used. So to get it as close enough to an effective powder, I took these shavings and put them into a blender. Now, okay, generally most people would advise against doing this. However, I took a chance and set up the blender like about 30 feet away from me just in case. And I actually found out that blending magnesium shavings actually is completely fine. Like, you don't have to worry about the fear of pulling up. So I let it blend for 5 minutes until it achieved a pretty decent mesh grade. Now, of course, it's nowhere near a powder, but it's something, and I imagine if you put a little bit more effort into this process, you could get an even more fine grade. So I took majority of the shavings and collected them in this jar, and then tried burning it. Now, just like with most elements, burning them alone half the time is usually not going to be enough. Because even with magnesium shavings, this isn't enough to do anything spectacular. But if you parent it with something like BP, well. Now for reference, this is BP when it's acting alone. Now this is the BP whenever it's mixed with magnesium particles. Now the camera had adjusted the exposure and everything, but for reference, I was standing 10 feet away from this stuff during daytime. And this stuff went nearly toe to toe at looking at an arc welder with your bare eyes. And it was so bright, I was low-key seeing spots for a couple minutes. So knowing how this stuff works, I decided to mix it into my smoke compound. So I ran one trial with just the RC candy mixed with some BP. Not bad. So let's see what happens whenever we lace this with magnesium. A lot quicker, a bit brighter, and a lot more violent. And I have no doubt this stuff kind of contributed to the burn rate a little bit. So I knew this stuff had to go in. So I took the rocket candy, added the catalyst BP, and laced this stuff with some magnesium shaving. So once I let this stuff dry out for about a day, I ran a quick test to see how fast it would burn, how bright it gets, and how much smoke it produces.
We have essentially created a cloud in here. The ceiling is covered in smoke.
So this stuff wasted no time getting to work. And we were able to see how much smoke it produced in very little time. Then after like a minute or two, this entire room turned into a hot box. Now, don't get me wrong. This is great, but it can be better. Now at this point, I'm pretty sure we have the burn rate problem settled pretty tight knit. But while burn rate is super important, there is another element to getting these things to disperse in a well-uniform cloud instantly. Now keep cooking with me, because I'm about to blow your mind, bro. Because there's a couple elements that cause something to go off and work as quick as it does. Now, these processes are called thermal runaway and confinement. Now, I'm treading into pretty dangerous info hazardous territory here a little bit, so I gotta be super careful with my words, but think of thermal runaway as like a chain reaction of sorts. One reaction activates another, which activates another in such quick succession, releasing so much heat and energy all at once. Now, there's two ways to take advantage of this, starting by minimizing pressure escape valves. Now, when pressure gets to be too much, it will always choose the most efficient exit. So I'm gonna set up a few example trials to kind of show you. Now, this is BP burning when it's fully out in the open with nothing restricting it. Has a relatively slow and steady burn off, okay. Now, this is some BP wrapped in some aluminum foil and tape with only one small exit point, and this is gonna be an example of runaway. Now, this last example demonstrates a combination of thermal runaway and confinement. And you'll know exactly what I mean once you see it. You get the picture? So the more you maximize confinement or runaway, the quicker this stuff will jet out and cover an area much quicker. So that all that pressure can release all at once. Or just at a very quick, powerful rate in the same vein of a pressure washer. So if we, in theory, apply the exact same mechanics to our smoke pellets, we should, in theory, have an extremely fast dispersal rate, much quicker than this.
I don't get paid enough for this.
You don't get paid enough. 3, 2, 1. So this definitely created a decently sized smoke cloud in such a small amount of time. But believe it or not, that was a really small amount. So what if we took it and added more to a bigger container? I know that's all. So an instant smoke screen that doesn't really last all that long due to wind and a bunch of stuff, but I'm pretty sure you get the idea on how to make something disperse near instantly. So everything I just talked about over like the last 10 minutes or so, we're gonna try to apply all of that into an instant smoke pellet. Now, initially, I seriously had no idea how to get this stuff to activate on impact until I was scrolling through some comments and saw where somebody brought up the idea of strike anywhere matches. This gave me a pretty crazy idea. See, it wasn't that the ignition pad didn't work. It was that in order for it to work, it would require that it really interacts with the striking surface. And if it didn't do that, it just simply wouldn't have gone off. Now, strike anywhere matches are a different story, as these matches are literally designed to strike, well, anywhere. Meaning that this didn't require a striking surface to go off. Simply making contact with anything would be enough to ignite it. Now, the only problem is that strike anywhere matches are extremely hard to come across nowadays. Like, you literally can't find these in almost any store. However, I got extremely lucky because it's one place that I can always count on to come in clutch when I have one of these problems. That's right, Ace Chemicals literally sells strike anywhere matches for like $3 a pop. So you already know I picked up some of these things in bulk. So I went outside to test them and they did in fact strike anywhere. So I began to experiment with some ignition methods with this stuff. So I tried making a rigged Armstrong mix version of this stuff. And it really wasn't even a mix. It was just the crushed up match heads wrapped in some tape. So I decided to strike it with a hammer to see what happens. And well, that low-key fucked up my ear, bro.
That was really loud. I tried not to make a noise.
Wait, look back at it. Yeah, so future reference, if you're gonna do something like this, be sure to do it in like a very open area. Because if you know anything about reverbs and sound waves, I felt every bit of that in my right eardrum. But just like with the matches, these things weren't really throw impact sensitive either. So that's when I got a little bit creative. So I lined up 4 match heads on the edge of this pipe to see what would happen whenever I dropped it on its head. And I couldn't believe it, but the matches actually ignited. Meaning that if I can integrate this with a smoke pellet, this just might work. So I created a DIY fuse using some toilet paper and a match head and stuffed my smoke compound in this metal tube and placed the matches at the edge to see what happened whenever I strike this thing anywhere.
Yeah, I'm gonna stand like over here.
Yeah, Wait, that was low-key effective!
Yo, it didn't light.
I know, dude, that was the scary part.
Dude, what the fuck?
Dude, I was fucking... Ladies and gentlemen, thermal runaway plus confinement plus strike anywhere. So this turned out to be very promising. And admit it was time to take these things to the next level. So with this, my goal was to create a few different variations of the smoke pellet. First, I would try to make one that was more or less in the same style as his ball smoke pellets from the games. Then I would try to make one that's frag based. And then lastly, try to make a dual vent smoke pellet. But first, I was going to need to set up a bit of a containment chamber to see how this stuff will react if we were in a hypothetical indoor environment. Which is also one thing one of you guys recommended to test, because these things work well outside. But imagine if this stuff was in an environment where the smoke could not escape that easily. So first, a dual vent smoke pellet. And this essentially works by having the smoke start burning from the center and then it exits out from the 2 ends. And I was mostly inspired by the one that I saw in Batman Year One. The thing I plan to use to hold the smoke is this old axe can that I took apart. Bro, I just realized this is a great place to hide drugs. And since once I was already open, I would just use something else to create another hole in it. Now, some people said I should make like a pull pin style smoke pellet, which would be cool. But I wanted to take a more absolute approach to this one. Now, to make this version, I was going to need to make a fuse. And making a fuse is actually super easy. All you got to do is just take some BP and make a line on a paper towel and wrap it up. I later on did make a much better version than I used for all the other ones. So now, I just got to put a hole somewhere in the center to stick the fuse in. Then fill it with some smoke compound. Then put some strike anywhere matches on the edge of it. And all we have to do to set this thing off is literally strike it anywhere. Okay, I'm like a little bit nervous right now. I'm kind of nervous. I don't want to get nuked, but all right. I'll be Gucci, okay? God, dude. Oh God, where's the can at? Dude, oh my God. Can you guys see me? God. So look at this room right now. Dude, you cannot see anything in here. This bitch. Bro, I did not expect this thing to have as much of a crazy kick as it did. And with that one thing, we managed to fill this entire room with smoke. So dual vent had a little bit of a kick to it, but I think that was because one hole was smaller than the other. So it was naturally biasing the pressure to one end. All right, so the next one, I wanted to create one similar to the one that I made here, but this time change the strike methods a little bit. So version 1, I would make them the exact same way. However, I'd hold them upside down to see how well they would go off whenever I dropped them on the ground. Oh, this works. No, it should. So maximizing pressure here is most definitely the strategy for that extra quick dispersal that we desire so much. But I noticed that only one went off using this method, and the other one probably did not strike properly. But that just goes to show that the drop method isn't always guaranteed. And that's why for trial 2, I wanted to do a bit more of a reliable method, because this time I would strike them both on the ground and then throw them frag style. So here it goes. Woo! Are y'all ready, guys? It's gonna be like on some Call of Duty shit, but it'll be like frag out! Frag out! Frag out! This one was a little bit delayed, but all in all, yeah, good shit. Dude, can this top camera even see me anymore? Hello? So one went off immediately while the other was slightly delayed, but that was literally all thanks to the fuse, because these types of fuses are generally inconsistent at times. But that's just a thing we'll have to improve and modify in the future. But however, this was probably the quickest dispersal we've seen yet. The second the tube hit the ground, smoke pellets were sent across the room. And you'll notice it does not take much time at all for this stuff to overrun the room completely. Now, this is probably the big one, because this was a version that was literally months in the making. The pocket-sized sphere smoke pellet. Now, taking everything we learned so far about the Strike Anywhere matches and pressurized exit points, we finally crafted a working smoke pellet. Now, I had to make sure this thing was actually going to work. So I resorted back to some of the old methods, taking apart a golf ball and cutting it in half, and keeping only one end slightly open, then pack a bunch of this stuff into a paper towel. Then I would take some Strike Anywhere matches and stuff them into the open end. So if I'm correct, by throwing it on the ground, this should catch fire and make these things go boom. And surely I was correct. And this was extremely cool because it only takes like 3 or 4 matches for this thing to work, instead of needing like the 30 match heads and all those striking services from before. So in terms of efficiency, we gained some points there. And it cuts down assembly time by like a lot. Now, if we're speaking about smoke pellets, I think the reason Batman's actually able to create a pretty decently sized smoke screen is because it's not just one he's throwing. In theory, he could be throwing multiple. I mean, it's even showcased as such. So to test that theory, I'm gonna throw multiple smoke pellets to see how much of this room gets filled up. So yeah, most of these things definitely does its job. But I will admit these things do take a little bit of some aiming practice to be able to use properly. But I think having a slight learning curve to these things isn't really a bad thing. Because think about it. Like, you wouldn't want literally just anyone to be able to use these things like it's nothing. There has to be a little bit of skill involved. But yeah, these are definitely the upgraded Arkham Batman Smoke Pellets. Now, for gits and shiggles, we just wanted to pull one last Oppenheimer to conclude the day. Because typically it's in my best interest to burn/dispose of this stuff when I'm done with it. For, reasons. Hey bro, no trace, no case, am I right? But while I was at it, I wanted to test out an experimental concussion grenade just like the one he uses in Arkham Origins, which is completely useless but mostly acts as a way to stun your enemies, because this is kind of serving as a prerequisite for another device I'm working on currently. But anyway, here we go. Oh, this is gonna be a big one. That one's going kind of quick. That was all loud at this point. Oh yeah, and as promised earlier, we're gonna read off one last unemployed comment just before we wrap up. Okay, no, I seriously found this funny. So funny, in fact, I sent this to my Discord and then clowned him. But anyway.
There is so much incorrect information in this video. Holy crap, dude. You brag about being a STEM major, but are you sure that STEM isn't a crack pipe?
What?
You make this entire process more difficult and expensive than it needs to be, when all of the components you need to make smoke bombs can be legally and easily purchased. You block out important information claiming it violates YouTube's guidelines if there are dozens of channels with videos showing every single formula step needed to make black powder, smoke composition, sugar rockets, etc.
Okay, first off, I probably only spent like $30 total on that entire video. So if you think $30 is expensive, you probably want to look into getting one of these. Second off, how do you know that half those videos aren't age restricted or demonetized? Because typically you wouldn't know.
Scraping red phosphorus off of matchboxes is hilarious and a huge red flag that not only do you not know what you're doing, but you barely did any research either. You should focus on bringing real, reliable information to your viewers instead of putting that on the back burner and focusing on looking cool.
Okay, well, someone definitely sounds like they need a nap. But I'm pretty sure if this information wasn't reliable to any degree, this shit would not have worked. Now would it? But once again, most importantly with people like you, go get a job. And my final verdict for you is... Dick fighter! Dick fighter! Dick fighter! But anyway, if you guys did enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe with post notifications on so that you never miss an upload. Because 1, it's free. 2, it takes like 5 seconds. And 3, because we're always getting into something crazy here on the channel. But if you did enjoy what you see here today and want to see more of me, there are actually 2 things you can do. First, you can go follow my Instagram, link down in the description below, where I generally post updates and overall just hilarious shit. Also, be sure to go subscribe to my other channel, Jafonzo, link down below, where I do stream and upload other types of content there. And again, be sure to go check out my Discord, link down below. I also post updates there and generally chat with you guys. And if you would like to support me, consider becoming a channel member for only $2.99 a month. I mean, it's literally less than a double cheeseburger from McDonald's. But I do plan to upload an uncensored version of this video with a few more scenes that weren't included in here for reasons. Once again, shout out to all the current channel members. You guys keep this stuff going. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video.